place was nearly dead tonight, just like every other Tuesday. I wiped down the bar top and glanced at the clock. 11:43 p.m. The last regular had staggered out maybe 20 minutes ago, leaving the usual mess of empty glasses and napkins. Now it was just me and the low hum of the neon sign outside. That's when I felt it. You know that prickling feeling you get when someone's watching you? Except there was no one here. Just me and the dim lights. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to being tired or jittery from too much coffee. But the sensation wouldn't go away. I didn't hear anyone come in, no creak of the old door, no footsteps on the worn wooden floor, but I swear to God something was in here with me. I scanned the room, shadows danced in the corners, stretched out like they were trying to crawl toward me. And then I saw it, just standing there in the farthest corner by the jukebox. At first, it was barely noticeable, like my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the longer I looked, the more real it became. A figure, thin, almost skeletal, its body hunched and twisted like it didn't belong in this world. But what really got me was the face, or rather, the smile. Its lips stretched way too wide, like it was trying to hold back a laugh. But there was nothing funny about it. Its eyes, dark, hollow, bore into me, like they could see every thought I was trying not to have. I froze. My chest tightened. It didn't move. It just stood there, grinning. I forced myself to turn away, pretending I hadn't seen it. My heart hammered in my chest as I fumbled with the keys under the counter, trying to get the till shut, trying to get out. The damn thing wouldn't close right. My hands were shaking too much. The feeling of being watched was stronger now, suffocating. I had to look again. When I did, it was closer. Not by much, but enough to send a cold wave of terror through me. It hadn't moved like a person should. 1 second, it was by the jukebox. The next, it was a few steps closer, still grinning, still staring. I grabbed my jacket and bolted for the back exit, my feet stumbling over themselves in the rush. The night air hit me like a slap to the face, but it didn't calm the panic inside. I sprinted to my car, my breath ragged, hands fumbling with the keys again. I could still feel it. That thing. Watching me. I threw myself into the driver's seat, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. But I did. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of the lot like the devil himself was after me. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get the hell away from there. But as I turned out of the parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. It was there, in the back seat, still grinning. The hospital was quiet. Too quiet, even for the night shift. I leaned against the counter, flipping through a few patient files just to keep myself awake. The hum of the fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, but everything else was still. It was the kind of silence that made you feel like you weren't alone, even though you knew you should be. Then I heard it, soft singing. A child's voice, faint and distant, floating down the hallway like it was carried on a breeze that didn't exist. I froze, listening. It wasn't coming from any of the patient rooms, and there definitely weren't supposed to be any children on this floor tonight. I strained to catch the words, but they were garbled, like a nursery rhyme, half remembered. Curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my clipboard and stepped out from behind the desk, the sound growing a little louder with each step. The hallway was dim, the kind of lighting they kept low at night to make things calming. But tonight it felt like something was lurking just beyond the shadows. I turned the corner and the singing stopped. My breath caught in my throat. The lights flickered once, then cut out completely. My hand went to my phone out of instinct, fumbling for the flashlight. The small beam of light barely cut through the darkness, but it was better than nothing. That's when I saw her. At the end of the hallway, a little girl stood with her back to me, head slightly tilted, holding a worn-out doll in her hand. The doll's eyes, one missing, stared lifelessly into the dark. "Hey, are you lost?" I called out, my voice sounding far more unsure than I intended. She didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there, her thin frame barely illuminated in the faint glow from my phone. Something was wrong. I knew it, deep down in my gut. I took a slow step back, then another. My hand groped for the door handle behind me. I twisted, yanked, but it wouldn't budge. Shit. The girl's head twitched. Slowly, achingly slow, she began to turn. The whole time she held onto the doll, her grip tight around its frail neck. I could hear the soft scrape of her shoes on the floor as she moved, turning toward me. My breath caught as her face came into view. Her eyes, they weren't human. They were a milky, dead white, like the eyes of a drowned body. They looked empty, but at the same time, they gleamed faintly in the dark, catching the dim light of my phone in a way that made my skin crawl. Her pale skin looked almost translucent in the glow, like something sick and rotting beneath the surface. Her cracked lips pulled into a smile. Slow. Unnatural. Like she knew something terrible. Something she wasn't supposed to know. I yanked at the door again, panic rising in my throat. I didn't want to turn my back on her. I didn't want to take my eyes off those pale, dead white orbs. But I had to get out. Just then, the door behind me burst open. A rush of light flooded the hallway, and my fellow nurses stood there, eyes wide, confused. I stumbled backward into them, gasping for air, my heart hammering in my chest. "Hey, what the hell happened? You okay?" one of them asked, grabbing my arm. I glanced back down the hallway. She was gone. Just like that. Nothing but an empty stretch of corridor and the faint buzz of the lights flickering back to life. I didn't say anything. I didn't have the words. But that eerie tune, the one she'd been singing, it stayed in my head long after I'd left the hospital that night. The sun had just started to set as I made my way home from a long day at work, my breath misting in the chilly autumn air. The sidewalks were mostly empty, just the occasional car passing by. The streetlights were starting to flicker on, casting long shadows that made everything feel a little off. I tugged my jacket closer around me, trying to shake the uneasy feeling that had been gnawing at me all day. The reports on the news hadn't helped. People had been talking about it nonstop. Clowns. Not the fun, circus kind, but creepy ones, prowling neighborhoods at night, terrorizing anyone who was unlucky enough to cross their path. Some of those reports weren't just about pranks or scares anymore. People were disappearing. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Across the street, just standing there, was a clown. He was tall, much taller than I expected, dressed in a bright, multicolored suit that was torn in places. His face was caked in heavy, cracked makeup, with a disturbingly wide grin painted over his lips. In one gloved hand, he held something long and metallic, a knife, or maybe a crowbar. Whatever it was, it gleamed in the fading light, and I could feel my stomach turn. I stopped dead in my tracks. The clown hadn't noticed me yet, but he stood there, head slightly tilted as if waiting for something, or someone. My mind raced. The missing people. The news reports. The clowns. I didn't need to think twice. I turned and ran. As soon as my feet hit the pavement, I heard him behind me. The unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps slapping against the concrete, gaining speed. My breath came in quick, panicked bursts, and all I could think about was getting away. I dodged around the corner, hoping to lose him, but I could still hear the pounding footsteps. The clown was fast. My heart was hammering in my chest. I could feel the weight of his presence behind me, every footstep getting louder, the sound of metal dragging on the ground as he swung the weapon in his hand. I pushed myself harder, legs burning as I raced through the darkening streets. "Come back!" he shouted, voice high-pitched and mocking, like some twisted game. "I just want to play!" I turned another corner, praying I'd see someone, anyone who could help. But the streets were empty, and the only sound was the manic laughter behind me, closing in fast. That's when I spotted it, a parked car at the edge of a nearby neighborhood, the soft glow of a phone lighting up the inside. Two people sat in the front seats, chatting, oblivious to the danger creeping toward them. I sprinted for the car, hope surging through me as I waved frantically. "Help!" I yelled, my voice cracking from the exertion. "Please, let me in!" They looked up, confused, but when they saw the clown charging down the street, the color drained from their faces. The driver fumbled with the lock, and I grabbed the door handle, yanking it open just as I heard the clown's footsteps thunder behind me. I dove into the back seat, slamming the door shut just as the clown reached the car. He smashed his hand against the window, his grinning face inches away from mine, the weapon still dangling in his grip. His eyes locked onto mine, wild and gleaming, as he let out a low, guttural laugh. The driver wasted no time. He threw the car into gear, tires screeching as we peeled away from the curb. I looked back, breathless, watching the clown grow smaller and smaller as we sped down the road, his twisted grin the last thing I saw before he disappeared from sight. Safe. For now. But as we drove away, the news reports echoed in my head. Missing people. Clowns stalking the night. I knew this wouldn't be the last time I'd see him. There were others like him, waiting, and no one knew where they'd strike next. I'd always thought ghost hunting was a joke. Sure, I made videos about it for my channel, walking through supposedly haunted houses and abandoned buildings. I'd stay overnight at cursed hotels, sneak into rundown hospitals, and even walk through an old graveyard once, all for the views. But in all that time, I never saw anything. Not once. No ghosts, no spirits, no flickering lights. Just a bunch of eerie silence and my own footsteps echoing back at me. That's why I never took any of it seriously. I was confident, cocky even. I'd tell my audience, hey, if there's anything out there, I'll be the one to find it. But honestly, I didn't believe in any of it. Then I went to the forest on the outskirts of town. I'd heard stories, of course, how people used to go missing there, how strange sounds would echo through the trees at night, how animals avoided it. The locals said it was cursed, that something evil lived deep in the woods. I thought it was just another urban legend. Another perfect opportunity for content. I packed up my camera gear, tossed a flashlight into my bag, and drove out to the edge of town just as the sun was setting. By the time I reached the forest, the sky had turned a deep shade of purple, the last rays of light disappearing behind the hills. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches twisting together like skeletal fingers. All right, I muttered to myself, turning on the camera. Let's see what this place is all about. I walked into the forest, the crunch of leaves beneath my boots the only sound. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. No wind, no birds, just an eerie stillness that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I shook it off, telling myself it was just nerves. I'd been in creepier places than this, right? Come on, let's get something spooky on film, I whispered, trying to hype myself up. But the further I walked, the more uneasy I felt. There was something wrong about this place. It wasn't like the other places I'd been. This wasn't just some abandoned house or a forgotten road. This felt alive. About 30 minutes in, I heard it. A screech. Loud. Piercing. It echoed through the trees, sharp and inhuman. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't an animal, that much I knew. It sounded unnatural. My blood ran cold and I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt real fear. Shit, I muttered, turning in a slow circle, trying to figure out where the sound had come from. My flashlight flickered, and I cursed again, smacking it against my palm. It stayed on, but the beam was weak, barely cutting through the dense forest. That's when I saw it. Something moved between the trees, a shadow that shouldn't have been there. It was fast, too fast, darting just out of view. I whipped the flashlight toward it, but it was already gone. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me, suffocating me. I heard the screech again, closer this time. Whatever it was circling me. Hell no, I whispered, backing up. My camera was still rolling, but I wasn't thinking about content anymore. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I turned and ran, my feet pounding the ground, and ran for breath coming in ragged gasps. The trees blurred around me, and I stumbled more than once, my heartbeat roaring in my ears, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I could hear it behind me, that screeching, getting closer, closer. Fuck this. Fuck this. I gasped, pushing myself harder, my legs burning. I broke through the tree line, practically throwing myself out of the forest and onto the dirt road. My knees hit the ground, but I didn't care. I scrambled to my feet, looking back over my shoulder. The forest was still, silent. Whatever had chased me was gone. But I knew what I'd heard, what I'd seen. I didn't say a word as I got into my car and slammed the door, peeling out of there like a bat out of hell. I didn't look back. Not until I was miles away, safely back in town. I never went back to that forest, never talked about it on my channel. It was the first time in my life I realized I wasn't ready for what was really out there. And no amount of views was worth going back to find out what that thing was. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a deep orange hue across the sky as I parked my truck at the edge of the canyon. I had come to the Navajo Nation to explore the rugged beauty of the land, hoping to capture stunning landscapes for my photography portfolio. But as night fell, the air turned colder, and an unsettling stillness enveloped the canyon, raising the hair on the back of my neck. I set up my camera near a large rock formation, the shadows stretching long and dark. The wind whispered through the canyon, but something about it felt wrong, as if the whispers were carrying a warning. The locals had spoken in hushed tones about the legends of skinwalkers, shapeshifters who could take on the form of animals and people, using dark magic to hunt and stalk their prey. I had dismissed it as folklore, but the oppressive atmosphere made me rethink my skepticism. As the light faded, I noticed movement in the distance. My heart raced, and I raised my camera to zoom in, hoping to capture a picture of a deer or some other wildlife. Instead, I froze. A figure stood on the edge of the canyon, cloaked in shadows. It was tall and slender, but something about it seemed off. The way it moved was unnatural, jerky, as if its limbs were not meant to bend that way. I squinted, trying to make out more details, but the darkness cloaked it like a shroud. Then it turned its head toward me, and I felt a chill grip my spine. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, piercing through the gloom. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my camera as a wave of dread washed over me. Suddenly, it let out a low, guttural growl that echoed through the canyon, and in an instant, it lunged forward. Panic surged through me, and I turned to run, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back, but I could feel it gaining on me, a sinister presence lurking just beyond my vision. I darted through the underbrush, branches scratching at my skin, breathing heavily as fear propelled me forward. I could hear its footsteps behind me, fast and relentless. I remembered the old stories. Skinwalkers could mimic voices, could lure you in with the sounds of loved ones. I focused on the crunch of leaves beneath my feet, refusing to let my mind wander to what might be calling for me. Ahead, I spotted my truck, a beacon of safety in the darkness. I sprinted toward it, fumbling for my keys as I reached the driver's side door. Just as I got it open, I heard the voice, soft, melodic, almost familiar. "Help me, please." My blood ran cold. It sounded like my sister, the one who had gone missing 2 years ago. "No," I shouted, shaking my head to clear the fog of disbelief. "You're not real." But the voice continued, filled with desperation. "I'm here, please, just turn around." I couldn't think. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking as I started the engine. The growling from the creature grew louder, mixing with the echo of my sister's voice. I threw the truck into reverse and spun the wheel, speeding down the narrow dirt road, the tires kicking up dust and gravel. I didn't stop driving until I reached the nearest town, heart still racing and sweat soaking through my clothes. I parked in front of a diner that was still open, the neon lights flickering against the darkness. I rushed inside, stumbling over my words as I tried to explain what happened to the waitress. "Skinwalker. Canyon." I heard her voice, but she only nodded knowingly, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "You're not the first. They'll take you if you let them." I sat there for hours, staring out the window, and waiting for dawn to break. The stories echoed in my mind, tales of the shape-shifting monster that preyed on the unsuspecting, using the voices of the lost to lure in its victims. The canyon was beautiful in the daylight, but as I drove away the next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the weight of the darkness still lingering in my thoughts. I knew I would never return to that canyon again. I would never risk hearing that voice again, knowing what lurked in the shadows. The bathroom was dead quiet when the announcement blared over the intercom, a voice filled with panic that made my heart sink. "Attention, students and staff, the school is on lockdown. This is not a drill. Lock your doors, stay away from the windows, and remain silent." A lockdown, not a drill. And I wasn't in a classroom. I wasn't behind a locked door like the rest of them. No, I was in the one place you don't want to be during a lockdown, the bathroom. No windows, no real escape, just me and these flimsy stall doors between me and whatever was coming. I heard about the escaped patient on the news that morning, a dangerous guy who broke out of an asylum nearby. The media had been talking about missing people, and the rumor mill at school had been spinning like crazy. But I never thought it would touch us here. Now the air felt thick, like the whole building was holding its breath, and I was right in the worst place possible. I rushed into a stall, my hands trembling as I quietly locked the door. My heart was hammering in my chest, every muscle tense with fear. I sat down on the toilet seat, knees pulled to my chest, trying to control my breathing. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the silence itself was suffocating me. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, the kind that make your skin crawl. They echoed down the hall, and I prayed, begged silently that they wouldn't come any closer. But the footsteps continued, drawing nearer until they were right outside the bathroom. The door creaked open, and I stifled a gasp. I peered through the small gap between the stall door and the frame, my pulse quickening. A man stepped into the bathroom, tall and disheveled, his clothes filthy and torn, his face pale and twisted. His eyes glinted with something dark, something feral. In his hand he gripped a rusty pipe, long and jagged at one end. It was him, the man from the news, the one who'd escaped. I could feel my heart in my throat as he walked further into the bathrooms, stopping at the sinks, looking around. He was too calm, too deliberate. And then he chuckled, a cold, low laugh that sent chills up my spine. "Oh, I know you're here," he said, his voice a mocking sing-song. "Hiding? Huh? Think these little stalls will keep you safe?" My blood ran cold, he knew. I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted blood, willing myself not to make a sound. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He started walking again, his footsteps slow and measured, and he approached the row of stalls. One by one, he banged on the doors, testing each one. Bang, bang, bang. Every slam rattled the metal, each one making me jump in terror. He was playing with me, drawing it out, savoring my fear. Bang, 2 stalls away. Bang, 1 stall away, and then he stopped right in front of mine. I could see his boots under the door, the edge of his weapon scraping against the floor. Another low chuckle. "Think I don't know where you are?" he whispered, his breathless voice dripping with malice. "Come on, open up." I felt tears sting my eyes, my chest tightening as I tried to hold back a sob. My mind raced. He was going to find me. He was going to kill me right here. I was trapped. He rattled the handle to my stall, grinning, his fingers scraping against the metal. I couldn't stay here. If I stayed, I was dead. Without thinking, without planning, I slammed my shoulder into the door, throwing it open with all my strength. It hit him square in the face, knocking him back with a grunt. I didn't stop. I ran. He let out a furious roar behind me, and I could hear his footsteps thundering after me, closer and closer. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted through the hallway, my legs burning with each step. I could hear the distant screams from classrooms, other students catching sight of him through the windows. I kept running. The image of his face burned into my mind. The twisted grin, the way he'd laughed knowing I was trapped. I burst through the double doors and into the night air. The cool breeze slapped me in the face, and in the distance I saw them. Cops. Dozens of them. Firearms ready, their flashing lights piercing the darkness like a beacon of hope. "Help! He's inside!" I screamed, my voice barely my own. The officers ran past me, guns drawn. As I stumbled to the ground, my legs shaking, heart racing, every nerve in my body still wired with fear. I could still hear him laughing in my head, that awful sound that wouldn't leave me. Safe. I was safe now. But I would never forget the sound of his voice, that mocking tone as he hunted me like I was his prey. The clock on the wall read 12:03 a.m. It was just past midnight, and the place was dead quiet, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights above me. I hated this shift, but it paid the bills, so I couldn't complain. I leaned back in the creaky office chair, staring at the bank of monitors in front of me. The cameras fed me a grainy black and white view of the play area, the prize counter, the party tables, and the stage where the animatronics stood lifeless. Or at least they were supposed to be. Chuck E. Cheese. Place for kids, filled with cheap arcade games, overpriced pizza, and animatronic mascots that danced and sang during the day. But at night, it was just me and them. I took a sip of cold coffee, feeling the weight of the long hours drag on me. I hated the silence. It was too thick, too heavy, almost like the place was waiting for something. Then, from the speakers, I heard something faint. It sounded like a giggle. A child's laugh, soft and innocent but out of place. I froze, my cup halfway to my lips. The place had been closed for hours. No one was here. I scanned the monitors, flicking through the camera feeds. The ball pit was empty, the arcade machines dark, the tables cleared. No sign of anyone. I put the cup down and leaned forward by squinting at the screen. Another giggle, louder this time. It echoed through the empty building, and I swear I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. What the hell? I checked the feed from the stage. There, in the dim light, I saw the animatronics, Chuck E., Helen Henny, Mr. Munch, and the others, standing in their usual stiff poses, the way they always did. But something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. I leaned in closer to the screen, my pulse quickening. Then I saw it. Chuck E.'s head was tilted, just slightly, to the left. It hadn't been like that before. I sat up straight, my heart thumping a little harder. They weren't turned on. The whole system was shut down for the night. There was no way they should have moved. I quickly switched to another camera, one that showed a different angle of the stage. Helen Henny, her head had turned too. Not by much, just enough to notice. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. This had to be a glitch, a malfunction. Yeah, that's what it was. Old machinery, faulty wiring. I tried to convince myself that's all it was, but something about the way they stood there, staring out into the darkened room, sent a chill down my spine. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from somewhere in the building, and I nearly jumped out of my seat. My eyes darted back to the monitors, scanning the rooms, trying to find the source. The sound came again. Closer this time. It sounded like metal on metal, something moving. I switched to the feed from the kitchen. Nothing. The bathrooms. Empty. The hallway near the prize counter. My heart skipped a beat. One of the animatronics was missing. Mr. Munch. He wasn't on the stage anymore. His hulking purple form had vanished from the spot where he'd been standing just minutes ago. I blinked, staring at the empty space. I switched to the next camera. There he was. Mr. Munch, standing in the middle of the hallway facing the camera. His glassy, dead eyes stared right into the lens. His mouth was open, frozen in that wide, toothy grin they all had, but it felt different now, more menacing. He wasn't supposed to move. They weren't turned on. A sudden burst of static came through the speakers, and I heard the giggle again, the sound of children laughing, running, playing, but the place was empty. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up, my legs shaking beneath me. I didn't want to go out there, but I had to check it out. Maybe the system was malfunctioning, maybe someone had gotten in. I didn't know, but I wasn't staying in that office alone. I stepped out into the main area, my footsteps echoing through the empty building. The place looked different at night. The dim lighting made everything feel off, like the shadows were hiding something. I shined the flashlight toward the stage. Chuck E. Cheese was still there, but his head, it had turned again. Now it was tilted all the way to the side, like he was watching me. My stomach twisted into a knot. I pointed the beam of light down the hallway. Mr. Munch was gone. I swallowed hard, feeling the cold sweat drip down my back. The giggling came again, closer now. It echoed through the room, bouncing off the walls, but there was no one there. No kids, no voices, just me and the animatronics. Then, from behind me, I heard it, a soft, scraping sound, like something being dragged across the floor. I whipped around, shining the flashlight at the floor near the arcade games. There, at the edge of the light, I saw him. Mr. Munch, lying on the ground, dragging himself toward me. His arms were stiff, his body jerking with each movement. His mouth was open, that awful grin locked on his face as he slowly inched closer. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The giggling grew louder, echoing all around me, but the only sound that mattered was the scrape of metal against the floor as Mr. Munch dragged himself closer and closer. I turned and ran. My footsteps echoed through the building as I sprinted toward the exit, my heart pounding in my ears. Behind me, I heard the scraping, faster now, like he was gaining speed. I reached the door, slamming my hand against the handle, praying it would open. It did. I burst out into the cool night air, gasping for breath, my pulse racing. I glanced back inside, the lights flickering as I slammed the door shut behind me. Silence. I stood there for a moment, my hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. The building was quiet again, the giggling gone, the animatronics still. But I knew I'd never look at Chuck E. Cheese the same way again. I was alone, as usual. The theater was dead silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. It was past midnight, and I had just started my night shift as the janitor. I always preferred the quiet of working after hours. No screaming kids, no popcorn to sweep off the floor as soon as I'd cleaned it up. Just me, the mop, and my headphones. I pushed the mop across the sticky floor of Theater 4, my music playing in my ears, drowning out the eerie silence. I had a playlist set to get me through the night. Something about good music helped me forget how creepy the place could be when it was empty. The theater was old, recently renovated, but the bones of the place were still ancient. Sometimes, the way the shadows moved in the dim light made me feel like I wasn't alone. I told myself that was just my imagination. As I mopped my way to the front of the theater, something strange happened. My music cut out. For a second, it just glitched. Static buzzed in my ears, then silence. I frowned, pulling my phone out of my pocket. I tapped at it, trying to figure out what went wrong, but everything seemed fine. Full battery, no reason for the music to stop. I was about to switch the playlist back on when something caught my eye. There was someone in the back row. I blinked, my heart skipping a beat. The theater was supposed to be empty. Everyone had cleared out hours ago. I squinted through the dim light. It was a woman, seated in the farthest row. She wore an old, faded dress, the kind you'd see in movies from the 40s or 50s, her hair pinned up in neat curls. I stood frozen for a second, my hand tightening around the mop handle. "Ma'am?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The theater's closed. She didn't move, just sat there, still as a statue, facing the screen. Her head tilted slightly to the side as if she were listening to something. I took a step forward, my shoes squeaking on the sticky floor. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt that prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the kind that told me something wasn't right. "Ma'am?" I called again, louder this time. Nothing. The glitch in my music, the static in my ears, all of it rushed back to me at once. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I felt like I shouldn't get any closer, like I should just leave her there and go. But I had to check. I was the only one on duty, and there couldn't be anyone here. I started walking toward her, my footsteps slow, my pulse pounding in my ears. With every step, the dim light seemed to flicker just a bit, casting strange shadows over the empty seats. As I got closer, I noticed something odd about the woman. The fabric of her dress was too worn, too faded, like it didn't belong in this world. And her skin was pale, almost gray, like she hadn't seen sunlight in decades. I stopped halfway up the aisle. That's when she moved. Her head turned, slowly, unnaturally, until her face was half visible in the flickering light. My stomach dropped. Her eyes were dark, hollow, and her lips parted as if she were about to say something, but no sound came out. She just stared at me, her mouth frozen in a silent scream. I stumbled back, the mop clattering to the floor. My heart raced as I turned and bolted out of the theater, nearly tripping over the stairs in my haste. I didn't look back until I was out in the lobby, breathing hard, my hands shaking. The theater was empty again. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to convince myself that I hadn't seen what I thought I saw. But the image of her face was burned into my mind. The next day, after a sleepless night, I returned to the theater for my shift. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that what I had seen wasn't just my imagination. As I made my way down the hallway, I passed by a wall covered in old black and white photos. The place had been around since the 1930s, and the owners liked to keep some of the history on display. That's when I saw her. In one of the photos, standing in front of the theater back when it first opened, was the same woman I'd seen last night. The same dress, the same hair, the same hollow eyes. I took a step closer, my blood turning to ice. The caption beneath the photo read, "Opening Night, 1941. Tragedy struck when a local actress, Evelyn Gray, was found dead in the theater shortly after this photo was taken." I stared at the picture, my heart pounding in my chest. The woman in the photo, Evelyn Gray, was the same woman I had seen in Theater 4. The same woman who had been sitting in the back row staring at the screen. She wasn't supposed to be there. Not anymore. And yet, I knew she was. I was lying on the couch, halfway between sleep and whatever the hell you call it when your mind wanders. The TV was on, some late night rerun I wasn't paying attention to, and the house was dim, the only light coming from the glow of the screen. My phone buzzed once, twice, then it just stopped. I ignored it. Whatever. Probably just spam. But then the TV flickered. At first, I thought it was the cable cutting out. I cursed under my breath, sat up, and grabbed the remote. But instead of the show returning, the screen cut to static. My brows furrowed, and I clicked through a few channels. Nothing but static. Before I could fully register the frustration building up, the TV went black for a split second. Then it flashed back on. Not the show, not a commercial, but one of those emergency broadcast system alerts, the kind you see when they test the thing with that awful buzzing noise. Except this wasn't a test. A monotone voice rang out over the static, robotic, and cold. "This is an emergency broadcast. Please remain indoors. Lock all doors and windows immediately." My heart skipped a beat. What the hell? The screen changed to an image, grainy and flickering, of a figure standing on a street corner. But something was wrong. The figure, it looked like a person at first glance, but the longer I stared, the more off it seemed. Its limbs were too long, its head slightly tilted in an unnatural way. The image was distorted, its face blurred, but the form was undeniably human. The voice returned. "There have been multiple reports of human distorters in your area. These entities mimic human appearance but can be identified by their distorted features. Do not approach them." I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. Distorters? This had to be a joke, right? Some viral stunt or horror marketing bullshit. But the more I watched, the more uneasy I became. The voice continued, too calm for the words it was saying. "Distorters are dangerous. If you encounter an individual whose face or body appears distorted, stay calm and avoid eye contact. Report the sighting immediately. They will attempt to mimic familiar faces and voices. Do not engage." I sat there, frozen, my hands clutching the remote tighter than necessary. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My instincts were screaming that something was very, very wrong. I felt like I was being watched, even though I was alone in the house. Then the broadcast switched to live footage. Shaky camera work from a phone or something, of a person walking down a dark street. They were talking, breathing heavily, scared out of their mind. "Jesus Christ, what the fuck is that?" the person whispered. Their phone light caught something in the distance. A figure, at first just a silhouette, but as the person zoomed in, the shape became clearer. It looked like a man. Tall, too tall, with a twisted neck and limbs that bent at impossible angles. Its face was half there, the other half smeared like a glitch in real life. The way it moved made my skin crawl, like its joints weren't connected the right way. The voice cracked through again, distorted like everything else. "Do not attempt to communicate with the distorters. They are hostile. Report any sightings to authorities immediately." I was trembling now, gripping the edge of the couch. My heart was pounding in my chest as I glanced out the window, half expecting to see one of those things standing in the street outside. But everything was quiet. Then the audio on the broadcast glitched. The voice, which had been monotonous and steady, suddenly became wrong. Distorted. "We are already here." My blood ran cold. I grabbed the remote and switched the TV off, the house plunging into an even more eerie silence. I needed to calm down. It was just some fucked up joke, right? A stupid broadcast designed to scare people. But then I heard a noise, a faint tapping sound coming from the front door. No. My pulse skyrocketed, my mind racing. I had just locked everything. I swore I did. But the tapping continued, slow and deliberate, like something, wanted to be let in. I stood up, heart in my throat, and tiptoed to the window beside the door. I peeked out, just a crack, just enough to see. There was a person standing on my porch. A man, or at least it was trying to look like a man. His face was obscured by shadow, but something was wrong with the way he stood. His neck was tilted at a weird angle, too far to one side. His arm was reaching out toward the door, his hand twitching unnaturally. Fuck. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The broadcast wasn't some joke, it was real. These distorters, whatever the hell they were real. The tapping got louder, more insistent. "Hey," a voice whispered from the other side of the door, soft but chilling. "I know you're in there." My stomach twisted. That voice, it sounded familiar. Too familiar, but the broadcast warned me. These things mimic. They try to sound like people you know. I didn't respond. I didn't dare move. Then the thing chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent chills down my spine. "I can hear you breathing," it said, still tapping, still mocking. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone. I needed to call someone. The police. Anyone. Before I could dial, the tapping stopped. Silence. I held my breath, waiting, listening. Then the handle turned. Slowly. The bus rattled as it bumped along the old country road, the sun casting long shadows over the fields. It was only halfway through the day, but the trip back to school felt endless. Most of the kids were still chattering from the field trip, their excitement over the aquarium starting to die down as the ride stretched on. I sat near the middle, staring out the window, zoning out like I usually did on these rides. Then suddenly the bus jerked to a stop. The brakes squealed loudly and I jolted forward, nearly knocking into the seat in front of me. Everyone else quieted down, confused, murmuring. The bus had pulled to a halt in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't a stop sign, no other cars, just this old road surrounded by trees and fields. Mrs. Hadley, our teacher, frowned and stood up, looking over toward the driver. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice calm but a little strained. The driver didn't answer at first. He just stared ahead, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Then, slowly, he pointed. Everyone's gaze followed. There, standing in the middle of the road, was a woman. She was hunched over, her shoulders trembling as she sobbed uncontrollably. Her long, tangled hair covered her face, and her clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in days. She was barefoot, and her skin was pale, almost sickly. She was just standing there, weeping, blocking the road. "What the hell?" someone behind me muttered. Mrs. Hadley leaned closer to the driver. "Do you know her?" He shook his head slowly. "No," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. "But she came out of nowhere." "Ma'am?" Mrs. Hadley called, her voice louder now, authoritative. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The woman didn't respond. She just kept crying, her body shaking with every sob. The driver fidgeted in his seat, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror at us, then back at the woman. "I don't like this," he stammered. "Something's not right." Before anyone could react, the woman suddenly lifted her head. Her eyes were wild, bloodshot, her face twisted in a mix of grief and something darker. Rage, maybe. Her crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a low, guttural moan. And then she screamed. A bone-chilling, high-pitched scream that pierced the silence of the bus and sent shivers down my spine. The woman started walking toward the bus, her steps uneven, erratic. Her hands were shaking, and she kept clawing at her own hair, her mouth hanging open as that horrible scream filled the air. "Holy shit," one of the kids whispered, his voice trembling. Mrs. Hadley backed away from the front of the bus. "Lock the doors. Lock them now." The driver was frozen, his face pale. The woman was getting closer, her screams growing louder, more desperate. She slammed her fists on the front of the bus, rattling the whole vehicle. Her face pressed against the windshield, eyes bulging, mouth stretched wide in a horrible grimace. Her fingernails scratched at the glass, leaving jagged marks. "Go!" Mrs. Hadley shouted, panic rising in her voice now. "Hit the gas!" But he didn't move. The woman kept pounding on the windshield, her screams turning into guttural snarls. I could see her breath fogging up the glass, her nails scraping louder and louder. The bus rocked with every hit. Suddenly, there was a loud crack. The glass splintered, spiderwebbing under the force of her fists. We all screamed, the kids in the back starting to cry, panic rippling through the bus. Finally, the driver snapped out of it. He slammed his foot on the gas pedal, and the bus lurched forward. The woman stumbled, falling back onto the road as the bus sped past her. I glanced out the back window, and for a moment I saw her sitting there in the middle of the road, her mouth open, still screaming as the bus disappeared down the road. Everyone was shaken, some of the kids sobbing, Mrs. Hadley trying to calm them down. But I couldn't shake the image of that woman, the way her eyes looked, that twisted expression of rage. And the worst part? As we sped away, I could have sworn she started laughing. The forest was quiet that morning, almost too quiet. The kind of stillness that makes you feel like something's off, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. But I shook it off, chalking it up to the early hour. I had been out here plenty of times before, and nothing had ever gone wrong. It was just me. the crisp morning air, and the goal of bagging a deer, just like every other weekend. My boots crunched softly over the underbrush as I moved deeper into the woods, rifle slung over my shoulder. The autumn leaves had mostly fallen, leaving the ground littered with brown and gold, perfect cover for a deer to blend in. I scanned the trees looking for any sign of movement, but there wasn't much to see. No squirrels, no birds, nothing. Just dead silence. A couple of hours passed, and still no sign of any deer. I crouched by a tree, watching the sun climb higher into the sky. Maybe it wasn't my day. Maybe the deer were further north, or maybe I was just in the wrong spot. I sighed, my breath visible in the cold air, and decided to move further into the woods. Maybe I'd have better luck deeper in. As I walked, something caught my eye, movement in the distance. I froze, squinting through the trees. There, about 50 yards ahead, I saw it. A deer. A big one. A buck, standing still in a small clearing, its head down as it grazed on some low-hanging branches. Finally, I crouched low, moving slowly, quietly. I raised my rifle, aiming carefully through the scope. My finger hovered over the trigger. That's when it happened. The deer's head snapped up, its dark eyes locking onto mine. I didn't move, didn't breathe. It shouldn't have noticed me. I was too far away, downwind. But those eyes, they weren't like any deer I'd ever seen. They were too focused, too aware. I lowered the rifle slightly, hesitation creeping in. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, the deer stepped forward, its gaze never leaving mine. Another step, and another. It wasn't running away like a deer should when it sees a hunter. It was walking toward me. I stood up slowly, lowering the rifle completely now, heart thudding in my chest. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath. The deer's pace quickened. Its steps became more deliberate, more aggressive. That's when I saw it. The way it moved. It wasn't just walking, it was stalking. Its muscles rippled under its coat, its legs too long, too angular. And those eyes, they didn't blink. The deer stopped just a few yards away from me now. And in the eerie silence of the woods, I swear I heard it breathing. Heavy, labored breaths, like it was waiting for something. I took a step back. The deer took a step forward. My heart pounded. My mind raced. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. Deer don't act like this. Without thinking, I turned and bolted, sprinting through the trees as fast as I could. My boots slid over the damp leaves, branches slapping my face and arms. I didn't care. I had to get away. I could hear it behind me, the sound of hooves pounding against the earth, gaining on me. I looked over my shoulder, and what I saw chilled me to the core. The deer wasn't running like a deer should. It wasn't bounding through the forest on all fours. It was standing on two legs, sprinting after me like a human, its front hooves outstretched like claws, its eyes wide and wild. I ran faster, pushing my legs to their limits. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but the sound of those hooves kept coming, closer and closer. I could hear its snarling breaths like it was right on top of me. I dodged between trees, zigzagging through the woods, trying to throw it off. But no matter what I did, it kept coming. Relentless, tireless. I could feel it getting closer, so close I could almost feel its breath on the back of my neck. Then, without warning, something slammed into me from behind, knocking me to the ground. I rolled over, scrambling to my feet, only to see the deer standing over me, its head tilted unnaturally to the side. It loomed above me, its body casting a long shadow over the forest floor. And then it spoke, a low, guttural voice that didn't belong to any animal I'd ever heard. "Run." I froze, terror gripping my body. The deer lowered its head, its antlers gleaming like knives in the faint sunlight. I didn't wait. I scrambled to my feet and ran, faster than I'd ever run before. My legs were burning, my heart pounding in my ears, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I didn't look back, and even now I can still hear those hooves behind me, echoing in the back of my mind. The rain hit the grocery store windows in waves, distorting the neon sign out front. It was late, close to closing time, and most of the aisles were empty. I hadn't planned on being there so late, but the rainstorm had rolled in out of nowhere, and I figured grabbing a few things would give it time to pass. I stood in front of the dairy section, squinting at the expiration dates on milk cartons. My mind was elsewhere, thinking about work, the long drive home. The storm outside rumbled low, the occasional flash of lightning lighting up the aisles. As I reached for a carton, I felt it, a strange prickling at the back of my neck, the kind you get when someone's watching you. I slowly lowered the milk and glanced around, trying to shake the feeling. The store was quiet, too quiet for a place that was still technically open. At first, I thought it was just me being paranoid. Maybe the rain, the dim lights, the eerie silence was playing tricks on me. But when I turned down another aisle, I saw him. A man, standing at the far end, his face partially hidden beneath a hood. He stood too still, staring right at me. His clothes were dark, blending in with the shadows the storm had cast through the store. I froze for a second, trying to convince myself it wasn't what it looked like. People wore hoodies all the time. It's just another customer, I told myself. Maybe he's lost, or maybe he's just browsing. I turned away quickly and headed to the next aisle, grabbing whatever I could off the shelf to make it look like I wasn't panicking. But my heart was pounding now, that prickling feeling growing stronger. I glanced down at the puddles of water on the floor, probably dragged in by the few remaining customers, and quickened my pace. I looped around the next aisle, peeking over my shoulder. The man was gone. The relief that washed over me was short-lived, though. As I turned back, I saw him again, closer this time, standing by the end cap, his hood still pulled low over his face. I wasn't imagining it. He was following me. I felt my breath catch in my throat. My fingers tightened around the grocery basket in my hand. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just some guy looking for the same item, but the way he stood there, not moving, not saying anything, it wasn't right. I glanced around, realizing how empty the store really was. No chatter, no cashiers, just the rhythmic tapping of rain against the windows and the faint hum of the store lights overhead. I had no idea where the other customers had gone, if there even were any. Trying not to look panicked, I walked toward the front of the store over there, mentally calculating the steps it would take to get to my car. The parking lot was probably dark, and the rain was only coming down harder. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of there. I stole another glance behind me. He was following me, his pace quickening. My heart raced as I picked up speed, gripping my basket so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I reached the front of the store, the automatic doors whooshed open, and the cold, wet air hit my face. I stopped dead in my tracks. The parking lot was almost pitch black. The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see past the first few rows of cars. My car was out there somewhere, but so was he. I heard footsteps behind me, and I didn't have to turn around to know it was him. My pulse quickened, adrenaline kicking in. Without thinking, I darted to the self-checkout. I had no plan, no idea if there was even anyone working to help me, but my only thought was that I needed to get out of sight, out of the open. As I frantically scanned my items, I felt him lingering behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence, but far enough that no one would think he was doing anything wrong. The machine beeped, and I snatched the receipt with shaking hands. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my head down as I walked toward the exit, gripping my keys inside my pocket. My feet splashed against the wet pavement as I stepped into the rain, praying that I wasn't making a mistake by not running right then and there. I heard footsteps again, but this time they were distant. I chanced a glance over my shoulder. He was still inside, staring at me from behind the glass doors, like he was deciding if he should follow me or not. I didn't wait to find out. I sprinted to my car, the rain soaking me to the bone, my heart pounding louder than the thunder overhead. My fingers fumbled with the keys as I unlocked the door and threw myself inside. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and looked back at the store. He was gone. Just like that. I sat there, drenched, gasping for air as the rain pounded against my windshield. The storm continued raging outside, but it felt quieter now, like the danger had passed. But the truth was, I didn't know if it really had. The eerie feeling, the tension in the air, still clung to me. After a few minutes, I started the car and pulled out of the lot, never looking back. That night, as I lay in bed, the rain still hammering against my window, I couldn't shake the thought. He was out there, somewhere, watching. And maybe, just maybe, he'd be back. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the lake. The only sounds were the gentle lap of water against the boat and the occasional call of a bird overhead. I leaned back in my seat, the fishing rod resting lazily in my hands, waiting for the slightest tug on the line. "It's too quiet," Jake muttered from the other end of the boat, glancing around the still water. "You'd think we'd have caught something by now." "Give it time," I said, shrugging. "Fish don't exactly work on a schedule." But deep down, I agreed. The lake was too calm, too empty, the kind of calm that starts to feel unnatural after a while. Still, I wasn't about to admit it. We'd been planning this trip for weeks, and I wasn't going to let a little unease ruin it. Then the line jerked. My heart skipped a beat. "Finally," I muttered, pulling the rod up. But the pull was stronger than I expected, too strong. The line tugged hard, almost ripping the rod out of my hands. Whatever was on the other end wasn't just a fish. It was powerful, thrashing beneath the water with a force that made the boat sway. "Whoa!" Jake scrambled to his feet, peering over the edge. "What the hell did you catch?" "I don't know," I grunted, struggling to keep my grip. "But it's big." Suddenly, the water near the boat erupted. A dark shape moved just beneath the surface, too fast for me to make out. A splash, then another. The boat rocked violently, and I almost lost my balance. "Cut the line," Jake shouted. "Cut it before it drags us under." I fumbled with the rod, trying to grab my knife, but before I could act, the water went still. The line went slack. For a moment, everything was silent. Jake and I exchanged a nervous glance. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Then, from the depths of the lake, a shadow began to rise. I felt my stomach drop as the shape grew larger, breaking the surface of the water with a slow, deliberate movement. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen. A long, serpentine body, slick and glistening in the dimming light, emerged from the lake. Its skin was dark, almost black, with patches of moss and algae clinging to it. But its eyes were what froze me in place. They were a sickly yellow, glowing faintly as they locked onto us. "Oh my God," Jake whispered, backing up toward the middle of the boat. "What the hell is that?" The creature circled the boat, its massive form sliding beneath the surface again, but we could still see its shadow moving just below the water. It was hunting us. I grabbed the oars. "We need to get out of here, now." Jake didn't argue. He grabbed the second set of oars, and we both started paddling as fast as we could. But the creature was faster. It slammed into the side of the boat, nearly knocking us into the water. "Jesus!" Jake yelled, scrambling to stay upright. The boat tilted, water sloshing over the sides. The creature circled again, and I could see its dark form rising, preparing to strike. We paddled harder, the shore still agonizingly far away. My arms burned, but I didn't dare stop. Another hit, harder this time. The boat shuddered, and I heard the wood creak, almost splintering under the force. I dared a glance behind me. The creature's head was rising again, but this time it wasn't going back under. It was coming up. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. The sight of them, slick with lake water and who knows what else, made my blood run cold. "Paddle!" I screamed, my voice breaking. Jake was already doing the same, his face pale with terror. The boat was too slow. We weren't going to make it. But just as the creature lunged, something changed. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a sudden shadow over the lake, and the creature hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering like a dying flame. It stopped, watching us for a moment longer. Then, with one final splash, it sank back into the depths, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. We didn't stop paddling until we hit the shore. As we stumbled out of the boat, soaked and shaking, I glanced back at the lake. The water was calm again, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. Something was still out there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next unlucky soul to cross its path, and I'd never go fishing again.